Ever since 2012, December 21st, my birthday, by the way, things have changed quite a bit when we entered the Aquarian age. And things have been happening ever since. A lot of our old beliefs that we had for eons of time and that all of our high-minded professors were telling us were true about science and about our history as humans on this planet are being examined and found to be very faulty. And so a lot of things are being questioned. And of course, even government itself is being looked at again, which is really good. And the sources of information are being questioned, which is really good, because people are waking up to the fact that a lot of stuff that we've been taught in school, in college, and a lot of stuff that the medical profession has been putting out has not really proved to be accurate. Something called psychoneuroimmunology has disclosed the fact that the brain has more to do with healing, and our belief system and our emotions have a lot more to do with our healing than any medicine that man can devise, it seems. And a lot of well-known professors and doctors are getting into the act and talking more openly about alternative ways of healing, medicine. But even more than that, the whole idea of our existence through quantum physics. Quantum physics has opened the door to a completely new paradigm. The idea that we are all connected in some way, and that through this connection that we have with one another and with the plants and with everything in the universe, really, people are looking at unity consciousness. And there's many other names for this thinking, and I'll get into that a little bit later, if I can get my cards straightened out here. So what I'll present for you is not like complete. It's not, boy, I can't read this. It's not the ultimate truth, but it's what I am claiming to have. Oh, I can't read the answers. I need light. All right, I'm not claiming to have the answers to these questions that I'm going to propose to you, but we're going to look into them and consider some new ideas that have been coming up in just about all fields, but more specifically looking at the idea of God and spirituality and reality and questioning some of our old beliefs. Sort of like back when Christopher Columbus supposedly believed that that the planet was not flat, but it was round, and nobody could believe it, so they were executing people for their beliefs. And why was that? Well, the main reason is because that's what everybody taught them, and that's what they believed. And they didn't have any scientific proof. All they had was their perception, which is their eyesight and their hearing, and what we could sense around us. Everything said, naturally the earth is flat, because, I mean, I can see it's flat. No matter how far out you go, it's still flat. Everything's flat. But they couldn't get the big picture. And it's only when science eventually proved that it was not flat that people started to come around, you know. And then eventually everybody was saying, well, of course it's not flat. I mean, how could it be flat, you know? Because people were able to go around the whole globe and prove. So it was intelligence that got people to believe it, but up until that time, people couldn't get their heads around it. And that really has a lot to do with what's happening right now in science with quantum physics. And what we're learning is that everything is connected. How many of you have heard of the double slot experiment that they did that proved that our consciousness has one person only? Oh, good. That only when we look at something, our observation of it can change the effect. We can have an effect on things just by watching them or looking at them. And they noticed this, and in the double slot experiment, it was that they were shooting these buckyballs, they called, through these slots. And they were, when they had two slots and they were shooting through, it was creating a wave pattern, which they said that's impossible, because they said it can't be not there and there at the same time. That's inconceivable. It can't be true. And then they found out later on that if they didn't look at it and they weren't watching the experiment, everything worked exactly the way they thought it should work. But then they had a problem. How can't be both ways? So they had to kind of figure it out. What is going on here? And out of that experiment came a lot of new thoughts about our existence here on Earth and how we're connected. Some of the experiments that were done on plants. Because I can't read my notes, I'm not going to tell you the guy's name. But I will get back to it, I guess. The scientists had been in the FBI, I believe, or CIA, and he ran polygraph tests when they did questions on people to try to find out if they're lying or not. So what he was doing, though, he was really into plants. And he decided one day that he was going to put a polygraph detector on the plant. And he noticed that he was getting some weird readings on the thing, and he didn't know what it was. And quite by accident, he decided, well, I'm going to burn one of the leaves on the plant and see what it does. And lo and behold, the polygraph went crazy. It was like, you know, if somebody was lying, it was a big lie, you know. And he was really surprised at that. He said, well, something else must be interfering with it. So he went into the other room. He was nowhere near it. And he did the same thing. He said, I'm going to go get a match. As soon as he had that thought, the polygraph went crazy again. So then we got into the room, and he picked up the matches, and he was returning, and it went crazy again. So somehow an inanimate object knew what he was thinking and was responding to his thoughts, and it was causing fear in the plant. Well, this was one of the experiments, and it's been repeated time and time and time again, and I mean, it really is true. They had some eggs that were sitting close to each other, and they put the polygraph on one of the eggs, and the other polygraph, the other egg, well, there's two eggs, at least two eggs, there's more probably. They were going to boil in water. As soon as they went to actually carry it out, the polygraph on the other egg that was not involved, and which is actually sealed up in a lead container, it went crazy when the other egg was going to be boiled. And there's, how can this be? This is insane. What it's proving is that everything is connected. Not only are eggs connected, but we're connected to the eggs, and the eggs are connected to us. And so many, many, many experiments. This isn't just one experiment. This is a lot of experiments trying to double-blind controlled studies, you know, and they just don't have an explanation for it other than the fact that somehow consciousness is universal, and it didn't matter the distance or whatever, you know, it would still get the same results. Seems distance had no effect on it too. Another experiment that was done had to do with Dr. Emoto. I can't say his first name because I can't read it, but he was experimenting with water, and he noticed that not only words would affect the water when he he turned the water into crystals. He crystallized the water, and words that were loving and kind were, beautiful patterns were created, and words that were like hate and fear and things like that. Not only words, but music. And even just writing the word and attaching it to the jar or whatever would affect the water inside. When they took the water from a filthy pond and it was yucky, and they looked at it, it was ugly, it looked terrible. But then I think they used the word, I forget what word it was. It was either love or kindness or just a kind word. The pattern of the water changed. Even though it was murky water, it came out a beautiful structured pattern like a snowflake, really beautiful. And so they've been, ever since that happened, people have been really wondering, well, how these plants don't have minds, they can't think, they can't make decisions, but obviously we're connected in some way and they're responding to our love. Another experiment was done where food that was going to be eaten was tested, and it showed a bad wave pattern, like it was trauma or traumatized or fear. And then they prayed over the food and told the food that they were grateful for it to provide them with nourishment so that they could live, and they showed appreciation for the food. And then they ate the food and nothing happened. It didn't show the bad pattern, that it had prior. So a lot of experiments have been done, and they've been wondering for a long time, exactly what it is that is. Oh, his name is Masaru Emomoto. And they use prayer and pictures and music and words on the water, and they all had a positive effect. They did some double-blind, placebo-controlled studies too, where they put words on, or they infused the word hate in one jar, in the other jar love, and nobody knew which jar was which, but they put the water on the plants, and the one that had hate on it, the plant died, and then the one that had love on it thrived and flourished. So talk to your plants, talk to the water, if you want to keep your plants alive. Even, dirty water, if you infuse it with love, it'll have some good results for you. And let's see. What do I want to communicate here? What I really want to communicate here is an awakening that has been happening. So we know about that spiritually. I don't know. I started out as a Catholic, and then after I went into service for 4 years, I come out and became a Jehovah's Witness, because I found out that Jehovah's Witnesses, they will not bear arms against anyone. They won't, because they said Jesus wouldn't have done that, so they wouldn't do it. And so they go to prison, okay? And that's in all countries. That's even over in Africa. And, wherever there was turmoil, the witnesses would be gathered up and put in prison, and then whenever the war was over, they'd let them out again. So I was pretty impressed with that. I started studying that. And it was later on that I got out of it because it was too patriarchal, too authoritarian, and I felt that the way they were seeing women was not right. And so I just had some differing opinions on what they were doing. So I left there and actually got into Unity. Then I went to Science of Mind because they needed me there, because I was doing leading congregation singing and stuff like that, and said, okay, I'll do it, and it was one of the musicians from the first Unity Church that was asked to play at the Science of Mind Church, so I went there. Then when I came here, I got back into Unity again. So I've been kind of jumping around. But I've always done my own research as far as religion goes, and I've studied a lot of different theologies, and What I've come to believe now is that this oneness of unity, and I believe that, honestly, it's going to change the world. This thing is catching on big time, and it's because science is proving it true. I mean, before that, we didn't have anything to gauge it by, but people tend to believe scientists, and if the word gets out there, the thing is that there's a lot of people trying to stop it from being known by everybody, that we do have scientific proof that we are all one. And not only that, but we don't just affect the people that we're around, we affect the entire universe. And they took, I think it was 7,000 meditators, and meditated for a period of, well, it was 3 weeks, I think. And during those 3 weeks, there was a 72% reduction in crime universally around the planet. So they know, and there's been a lot of those done in smaller numbers, of course, in different cities where they have reduced the crime. Even during the worst crime time of the year, which is usually around Christmas, they reduce crime significantly just by having meditators meditate. And so there's something to this, you know, and they want to keep it hush-hush, but it's getting out anyway. There was something else I wanted to talk about. I don't know how much time I have left, really. Okay, then I'm sorry. I probably got at least 2 or 3 hours worth of stuff in here. What I want to talk about is healing. One of the things that I did when I started at Unity is I became a level 3 Reiki master, and I studied EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. And at the time, I was going through about 10 panic attacks a day. My life was in a mess, and I got over that in a very short time with Qigong and EFT, and also it convinced me. So if you've never had an experience like this, you wouldn't have my passion and my belief that we can heal ourselves. But I am absolutely, positively sure, 100%, there is nothing that we can't heal. It's really the mind in connecting with our higher self. And one other note, I'm going to start teaching those classes also on optimal EFT here pretty soon, which has to do with connecting through the higher self. And the other thing that I'm doing right now that I just want to mention, because I've mentioned this to Diane, I want to mention it to everybody. Power versus Force is a fantastic book if you haven't heard about it, where they had thousands of people using kinesiology to test to see the accuracy of various books and various things, the truthfulness, and it has to do with the level of vibration. The higher the vibration, the higher the spiritual. And when you get up to a certain point, you're kind of like the Dalai Lama, you know. And I forget what his rating is, but he's right up there with Jesus. He's real close. But you know what the highest book on the planet is? It's not the Bible. It's not the Quran. It's not any of those. It's the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. It is a higher vibration than any book or manual written, and it wasn't an accident. It's because contained in it is the Word of God throughout. We are sovereigns here on this planet. We are not subjects of our government. We are the ones who tell the government what to do. They are our employees. And that's how it was written. They have no power over the states. The states have power over them, or represented in. If you start studying the Constitution, and I just want to mention one quick thing before I leave, liberty first. If you can remember that, liberty first. Google that and take a look at it. This woman has been touring the United States for 7 years, 260 conferences every year for the last 7 years, to anybody that will listen to her. And she is awesome. She knows the Constitution, she knows what our rights are, and she knows that there are powers that be called, there are a lot of different names, the deep state and all those, that do not want us to recover, but we have to do something. And I really believe now we have the power to do it. We didn't for many, many years, but I believe that we can do it now. I really think it's going to happen. And with that, I will yield to whoever is next.